The mysterious hero. The princess stood on the balcony of her palace, looking out over the vast landscape of her kingdom. The soft breeze brushed against her face, but her mind was far away, lost in memories of a time long past. She had been just a little girl when it all happened, the day she was saved by a mysterious human, a hero whose face she could barely remember but whose actions she could never forget. It was a time of war. Her kingdom had been under siege by an evil empire that seemed unstoppable. The princess had been captured during a raid, taken away to a remote planet far from her people. There, surrounded by alien forces and dark, unfamiliar technology, she had felt alone and helpless. Her captors had made their plans clear. They would use her as a bargaining chip to weaken her kingdom's defenses. But then, as if out of nowhere, a man, human like her, had appeared. The guards never saw him coming. His movements were swift, almost like he knew exactly where to strike. With one quick, precise action, he had freed her from the enemy's grip. He didn't say much, but his eyes, they were filled with determination, strength, and something else. A kind of calm resolve that made the princess feel safer than she ever had before. She remembered the way he held her, guiding her through the chaos, protecting her even as they ran. His bravery had been unlike anything she had ever seen. He had given everything to ensure her survival, sacrificing his own safety without hesitation. They had escaped the enemy's clutches, and though the princess had tried to thank him, he had simply nodded, told her to stay safe, and disappeared into the shadows as quickly as he had come. Over the years, she had tried to find him. She had sent spies, hired mercenaries, even sent messages through every channel available, but it was as if he had vanished from existence. There was no trace of him, no sign of the human who had saved her life. The empire had continued to grow stronger, and the princess had been forced to focus on protecting her people and rebuilding her kingdom. But she never forgot him. She couldn't. And now, standing on that balcony, all she could think about was the one thing that had never left her mind, the question that had haunted her for years. Where was he now? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden movement in the courtyard below. A figure was approaching the palace gates, walking with purpose. The guards did not stop him. Instead, they stepped aside as if they had been expecting him. The princess frowned. Who was this man? She hadn't seen him before, but there was something about him that felt familiar. The figure stepped into the sunlight, and her breath caught in her throat. There he was, standing right in front of her palace. He was older now, his face hardened by time and battle, but there was no mistaking it. The human who had saved her all those years ago was standing in front of her once again. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment neither of them moved. The princess felt a flood of emotions wash over her. She had spent so many years wondering if she would ever see him again, and now, here he was, as if fate had finally brought them together. The hero was different from the young man she remembered. His once bright eyes were now clouded with experiences that had changed him. He looked worn, as if the weight of the universe had been placed on his shoulders. But there was still something undeniably familiar about him. The same strength, the same quiet confidence. The princess's heart raced. She didn't know what to say. Words seemed inadequate in the face of all that had passed between them. The memories of her childhood, of the fear she had felt as a captive, were suddenly all too real again. But now, with him standing before her, everything had changed. She was no longer the helpless princess trapped in a foreign land. She was a leader, a queen in her own right, and she needed him. The hero spoke first, his voice low but firm. "Your Highness, I've heard you've been searching for me." The princess nodded, struggling to find her voice. "I have. For years I've been trying to find you. I never thought I would see you again." He studied her for a moment, his gaze softening ever so slightly. "I never wanted to be found." The princess felt a pang in her chest. She understood now. He had saved her out of duty, out of honor. but he had never expected to be pulled into her world to become a part of her life. He had done what he had to do, and then he had gone, disappearing into the shadows to protect himself, to protect his own heart. But now the situation was different. The Empire's forces were stronger than ever, and her kingdom was on the brink of collapse. She needed him. She needed his strength, his courage, and his unwavering resolve. "I know you didn't want to be found," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "but I need you. My people need you. The Empire is closing in, and I can't fight this battle alone." For a long moment, the hero said nothing. He simply stood there, his eyes searching hers as if weighing his decision. The princess could feel the weight of his hesitation, the struggle inside him. Finally, he spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted to be a hero. I only wanted to make sure you survived, but it seems like fate has other plans." The princess nodded, her heart swelling with hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could fight together again, just like they did all those years ago. But deep down, she knew that this was only the beginning. The hero might have returned, but there was a long road ahead, filled with dangers, choices, and sacrifices they hadn't yet imagined. And yet, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that they could win. Together. The search for the hero. The sun was setting over the palace, casting long shadows across the stone walls. The princess stood at her window, looking out at the horizon, her mind still racing with thoughts of the man who had saved her all those years ago. The hero. He had returned, but there was no time to dwell on memories or emotions. The Empire's grip was tightening, and her kingdom needed him more than ever. Her soldiers had already begun preparations. For days, they had been scanning the skies, watching for signs of the enemy fleet. Their presence was everywhere now, ships cloaked in the darkness of space, hiding just beyond their reach, ready to strike. Every passing day brought the Empire closer to victory. But now, with the human hero back in her midst, things could change. But first, they needed to find out where he had been all these years. The princess turned away from the window, her gaze shifting to the table before her. On it lay a series of old maps and star charts, some marked with locations she hadn't visited in years. She picked up a worn piece of parchment, one that contained a detailed map of the galaxy, one that had been passed down through generations of her family. It showed worlds she had once called home, and others that were too distant to even imagine visiting. But there, near the edge of the map, was a planet she recognized. A place she had almost forgotten. That's where he had disappeared, too. She had spent years trying to understand why he had left without a word, without a trace. And now, standing in front of her, he was no different than a ghost, lost in time and memory. But perhaps there was something on that planet that would explain his absence, something that had kept him away all these years. A sudden knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Your Highness, the hero is waiting for you in the council room," said a voice from outside. It was Commander Zane, her most trusted advisor. His voice held a mix of urgency and curiosity. The princess nodded, her thoughts snapping back to the present. The time had come. She needed to speak to him, really speak to him, for the first time since his return. To understand why he had chosen to disappear and what had kept him from answering her calls for so long. She quickly left her chambers, her footsteps echoing through the grand hallways of the palace. The tension in the air was palpable as she made her way to the council room. Her heart was racing, but she kept her composure. She knew what was at stake. Inside the council room, the human hero stood near the large table, his back to her. His posture was stiff, guarded. He was clearly uncomfortable in this setting, surrounded by maps, strategies, and the heavy weight of responsibility that came with leadership. He was no longer the carefree, enigmatic savior she had remembered from her childhood. He was a man burdened by time, by the weight of decisions made long before this moment. He turned when he heard her approach, his eyes meeting hers once again. There was something in his gaze, a mixture of caution and reluctant recognition, as if he was still unsure whether he could truly trust her, whether he could let himself be pulled back into her world. "Your Highness," he said, his voice as calm and steady as it had been when they first met. "I assume you've brought me here to discuss the next steps. The Empire's forces are closing in. I'm not sure what you expect from me, but I'm not the man I once was." The princess could feel the walls he had built around himself. The years he had spent away from everyone, away from her, had hardened him, but she couldn't let him retreat again. She couldn't lose him a second time. "You don't have to be that man again," she said softly. "But I need you, we need you, my kingdom. My people need your strength." He glanced down at the table, his fingers brushing over the maps and charts that covered its surface. "I didn't come back to be a hero. I came back because I was told you needed help. And maybe I can still make a difference." His voice trailed off as if he was uncertain of the words even as he spoke them. The princess took a step closer, trying to bridge the distance between them. "You think you can't help me?" she asked. "That's not true. You've already done so much more than I could ever ask of anyone. You saved me once, and I'm asking you to do it again." He looked up at her then, his eyes narrowing with a mix of sadness and confusion. "I'm not the same person I was when I saved you. I've seen too much, done too much, and I've lost a lot." "I know," the princess said, her voice filled with understanding. "I can't imagine what you've been through, but I'm not asking you to be the same person. I'm asking you to help me protect my people. Help me take down the Empire together. That's the only way we can win." The silence between them stretched for what felt like an eternity. The hero seemed to be weighing her words, his eyes flicking between the princess and the map spread before them. Finally, he spoke. "Tell me what you need me to do." The princess's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to agree so easily. But there was a quiet determination in his voice now, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. She could see it in his eyes. The human hero was beginning to return piece by piece. "We'll start with this," she said, pointing to the planet marked on the map. "I need to know everything about it. What's there, who controls it, and most importantly, why you disappeared there. We can't fight the Empire without understanding their movements." The hero nodded. "I'll help you," he said simply, "but I need one thing in return." The princess raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "Trust," he replied, his voice quiet but firm. "Trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that I won't let you down again." The princess met his gaze, her heart filled with both fear and hope. She had no choice but to trust him, because the fate of her kingdom depended on it. As they stood together in that council room, the plan was set in motion. The hero had returned, and with him a chance for victory. But the path ahead would be fraught with danger. The princess knew they were stepping into unknown territory where even the best-laid plans could fail. But for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. Together they could fight back against the Empire. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could save the human who had saved her. The unexpected encounter. The wind howled through the narrow corridors of the palace, carrying with it the weight of uncertain times. The princess, now more determined than ever, paced restlessly in her private chambers. The hero had agreed to join the fight, reluctantly, yes, but he had agreed nonetheless. She could see it in his eyes, the same hesitation, the same reluctance that had marked their first meeting years ago. But there was no turning back now. The fate of her kingdom was at stake. She had sent her most trusted officers to gather intel on the planet the hero had disappeared to, the mysterious place he had spent years avoiding. The hero's silence on the matter had only fueled her curiosity. What had driven him to hide away on that remote, desolate world? What was there that had kept him so far removed from the people who needed him? The princess shook off the uneasy feeling that had settled in her chest. She couldn't afford to dwell on questions that had no answers, at least not yet. There was a war to fight, and in order to win, they needed to move quickly. The Empire would not wait for them to find all the answers. A sudden knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Your Highness," came the familiar voice of Commander Zane. "The hero has asked to speak with you." The princess straightened, wiping away the lingering thoughts of doubt. "Send him in." The door creaked open, and there he stood, the human hero, now dressed in the uniform of her kingdom's forces. The dark, battle-worn armor he wore seemed to blend seamlessly with his hardened demeanor. It was clear that whatever struggles he had faced over the years had changed him. He was no longer the same man who had once rushed to her rescue, full of youthful energy and determination. But there was still a fire in his eyes, one that would not be easily extinguished. He stepped forward into the room, his boots making a soft thud against the stone floor. His eyes met the princess's, and for the first time since his return, she saw a flicker of vulnerability there. It was brief, but it was enough. She had never been one to shy away from honesty, and in this moment, she knew it was time for both of them to face the truth. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice steady yet soft. The hero hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck as if trying to find the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said earlier about trust. I know you need me, but there's more to it. There's something I haven't told you, something I need you to understand before we move forward." The princess leaned forward slightly, her curiosity piqued. "What is it?" He took a deep breath before speaking, his voice quieter now. "The reason I disappeared all those years ago, it wasn't just because I wanted to hide. I wasn't trying to escape my past. I went to that planet because it's the key to everything. The Empire's rise, the technology they've used to become so powerful, it all leads back to that world." The princess's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? You're telling me that the Empire's strength comes from this place?" The hero nodded slowly. "Yes, the Empire found something there, a weapon, a secret technology, something that made them unstoppable, and I've spent years trying to figure out how to destroy it. But I couldn't do it alone, that's why I stayed away. I had to be sure that when I came back, I would be ready." The princess felt a chill run down her spine. This was worse than she had imagined. The hero had been hiding not just from her, but from a much darker truth, one that could change everything. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" she asked, her voice a mix of frustration and understanding. "I couldn't," he replied, his gaze distant now, lost in memories. "The more I learned, the more dangerous it became. I had to make sure that I wasn't dragging you into something you weren't ready for. And now that I'm back, I see that I was wrong. You are ready, but we have to act quickly." The princess stood up, the weight of his words settling over her like a heavy cloak. "What do we do?" "We need to find that weapon," the hero said, his eyes burning with determination. "The Empire is already using parts of it in their attacks, but if we destroy it, if we can cut off their power supply, then we might have a chance. But it won't be easy. The planet is protected by an ancient force, a kind of guardian that will do anything to prevent the weapon from being destroyed." The princess absorbed his words carefully. "Then we'll face this guardian together. We have to. We can't let the Empire control everything. If this is the key to their power, then we must destroy it, no matter the cost." For a moment, there was silence. The air between them seemed thick with the weight of their shared responsibility. The princess had always known that leadership came with difficult choices, but this felt different. This was personal. This was about more than just her kingdom's future. This was about preventing a power that could destroy everything she loved, everything they had fought for. The hero seemed to read her thoughts. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low. "This isn't just a battle for your kingdom. This is bigger. It's about the future of the entire galaxy." The princess met his gaze, her heart beating steadily in her chest. "I've always known that, and I know what's at stake. But I also know one thing for certain: if we don't act now, the Empire will win, and the galaxy will fall under their control. I can't let that happen." The hero nodded slowly, a faint, approving smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Then we'll do this together." The princess felt a surge of hope rise within her. There was no turning back now. Together, they would find the planet, face whatever dangers lay ahead, and destroy the Empire's weapon. It was the only way to ensure that the galaxy remained free. As the hero turned to leave, the princess called out to him, "One more thing." He paused, glancing back at her. "I trust you," she said, her voice firm. The hero's eyes softened. For the first time since they had reunited, he allowed himself to believe in that trust. And together, they began their journey toward the unknown. The descent into darkness. The stars outside the palace window twinkled faintly, like distant beacons guiding them to a future unknown. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, the quiet hum of the palace's vast halls seeming almost out of place compared to the tension that gripped the princess and her allies. They had made their decision. The Empire's secret weapon must be destroyed, and the only way to do that was to venture into the heart of the enemy's domain, straight into the ancient planet the hero had once called home. The hero, still wearing the dark battle gear of their kingdom's army, had gathered his few belongings and was preparing for what would undoubtedly be a perilous journey. As the princess stood by the window, her thoughts were heavy. She knew the stakes. This wasn't just a mission. It was a gamble with everything they had. If they failed, the Empire would grow more powerful and their world would fall into darkness. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. "Your Highness," Commander Zane called out, his voice grave. "The hero is ready to depart. We're prepared for the journey." The princess nodded, turning from the window. She had spent weeks preparing her forces for this day, knowing that every step from here on would bring them closer to an uncertain fate. This mission had to succeed. There was no other choice. She met the hero in the central hall of the palace. He stood tall and unwavering, his arms crossed, as though the weight of the task ahead hadn't quite sunk in yet. His expression was unreadable, a mask of resolve built over years of pain and loneliness. "You're sure about this?" she asked, her voice steady but full of the unspoken concern she had tried to push aside for so long. "Once we go down this path, there's no turning back. Whatever we find on that planet, it won't be easy, and it might be too late to stop it." The hero looked at her, his eyes hard but tinged with something deeper, maybe regret, maybe fear. But there was something else, too, an understanding of what they were about to face. "Once we begin this, the Empire won't stop hunting us," he said, his voice low and steady. "But that's a risk we'll have to take, and besides, you're not in this alone. I'll be with you." The words lingered between them, almost as if the promise he made wasn't just for her, but for both of them. They had been bound by fate before, back when he had saved her. Now it seemed their destinies were once again intertwined, and this time there was no room for doubt. They set off together, accompanied by a small, carefully selected team of elite soldiers. The journey would take them deep into space, into the vast unknown regions where no one had dared venture for centuries. The planet was cloaked in mystery, its coordinates locked away, hidden from all but a few. The princess had never been to such an alien place. She had spent her life fighting for her kingdom on her homeworld, not knowing that the real battle had always been elsewhere. As the sleek, fast ship sliced through the stars, the silence between the princess and the hero grew heavy. She knew what he was thinking. He was still grappling with his past. The years he had spent in exile, the burden of knowing things he wished he didn't. And yet, despite it all, they were here, side by side, preparing to face an unknown enemy. The hero broke the silence first. "I didn't come back because I thought I could save you," he said, his voice distant. "I came back because I couldn't leave you to face this alone, the Empire. They've been planning something much worse than I thought." The princess nodded, her eyes focused on the stars outside. "What are they planning?" The hero's eyes darkened. "They found a way to manipulate the technology. It's not just a weapon. It's a machine, one that can control minds, bend people's wills. That's how they've been able to conquer world after world without anyone realizing it. They don't need soldiers to fight their wars anymore. They have the power to make entire populations obey them." The princess felt a chill race down her spine. "And this machine is on that planet?" "Yeah," the hero confirmed. "That's where they've hidden it. The guardians of the planet protect it, but they don't understand what it really is. They only know it's something to be kept safe. But I know what it can do, and we have to destroy it before they use it to break the galaxy." As he spoke, the ship began to slow, and the faint light of an unfamiliar planet appeared on the radar. The planet was vast, its surface mostly covered by dense forests and towering mountains. The closer they got, the more oppressive the atmosphere seemed. It was a world caught in the balance between beauty and danger, a place that seemed to hold secrets buried beneath its surface. The ship descended, cutting through the atmosphere with precision. The princess could feel her heartbeat quicken as they neared the ground. What would they find when they landed? The hero's warnings echoed in her mind. As the landing gears engaged with a soft thud, the tension in the air grew thick. The team quickly unstrapped themselves, gathering their weapons and equipment. The princess and the hero exchanged a glance, one that said everything without needing words. They had come this far. There was no turning back. When the hatch opened, the cold air of the planet hit them like a wave. The sky above was a deep violet, the clouds swirling ominously as if aware of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. The team moved quickly, following the hero's lead as he navigated them through the thick underbrush. The further they went, the more oppressive the landscape became, an eerie stillness hanging in the air as though the planet itself was holding its breath. The princess tried to ignore the growing sense of unease. They had to keep moving, they had to stay focused. They were close now. The hero suddenly stopped, raising a hand to signal the group to halt. Ahead of them, through the trees, stood a massive stone structure, a temple-like ruin, ancient and weathered, yet still standing strong. This was it. This was the place where the Empire had hidden its weapon. The princess stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Is this it?" The hero nodded, his gaze fixed on the temple. "Yes, but we're not alone." As the words left his lips, the ground trembled beneath them, and a low rumble echoed through the air. Something was coming, and whatever it was far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The Guardian awakens. The ground trembled once more, this time with greater force. The trees around them swayed ominously, their limbs groaning in the wind as if they were trying to warn them. The princess could feel the vibrations in the soles of her boots, a palpable sense of impending danger settling over her like a heavy fog. Whatever was about to emerge from the depths of the forest, they weren't prepared for it. Not yet. The hero stepped forward, his hand reaching for the weapon at his side. His usual confidence was replaced by something far more primal, a deep, instinctive readiness. He had been to this place before, and he knew it better than anyone, but even he could feel the gravity of the situation. "Stay alert," he muttered, his voice low and strained. "Whatever comes out of those ruins, it's not going to be friendly." The princess nodded, her hand tightening around the hilt of her own weapon, a sleek blade that had been crafted just for moments like this. The elite soldiers moved into position, forming a tight defensive perimeter around the group. They were ready, but the fear in their eyes was undeniable. This wasn't just a fight. They were about to face something ancient, something that had been guarding this place for longer than anyone could comprehend. Suddenly, the earth cracked beneath them, splitting with a deafening roar. From the depths of the ruins, a massive shape rose, obscured by the mist swirling around the ancient stones. At first, it was nothing more than a shadow, a towering figure cloaked in darkness. But as it emerged fully into the light, the princess's breath caught in her throat. It was a giant. The creature stood at least 30 feet tall, its body covered in dark, jagged armor made of obsidian-like stone. Its face was hidden beneath a hood of thick, writhing shadows, only its glowing eyes visible, eyes that shone with an eerie, otherworldly light. The air around it seemed to warp and distort, the very atmosphere bending to its will. The Guardian, the protector of the planet's greatest secret, the one thing standing between them and the weapon they had come to destroy. The hero stiffened, his hand gripping his weapon even tighter. "This is what I was afraid of," he whispered. "The Guardian isn't just a protector, it's a weapon in itself, a living weapon." The princess swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling over her. They had come here thinking they would face the Empire's forces, but this creature was something far older, far more dangerous. It wasn't a soldier, it was a force of nature. The Guardian took a slow step forward, its enormous footfall shaking the earth once again. The ground cracked and groaned beneath its weight, sending ripples through the landscape. Its glowing eyes focused on the group, and for a moment the princess swore she could feel its gaze pierce into her very soul. Then, with a voice that was as deep as the earth itself, it spoke. "Turn back, mortals. You are not meant to disturb what lies within." The voice wasn't just heard. It resonated through the princess's bones, vibrating her entire being. She clenched her jaw, refusing to let fear show. She was the princess of this kingdom. She would not be intimidated, not now, not when everything was at stake. "We are not here to disturb," she called out, her voice steady despite the rising terror inside her. "We are here to destroy the weapon that threatens our galaxy. Stand aside and we will leave peacefully." The Guardian's eyes flashed with a light that seemed to dim the very sun. It took another slow step forward, its massive form casting a long, foreboding shadow over them. "The weapon you seek cannot be destroyed," it intoned. "It is older than your people, older than this galaxy. It was forged to control, it was forged to rule, and you are foolish to believe you can end it." The princess took a deep breath, trying to ignore the chill creeping up her spine. "Then we will destroy you," she said, her voice cold with determination. The hero's gaze shifted toward her, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "Wait," he warned, his voice urgent. "This isn't just a guardian, it's a part of the weapon itself. The more we fight it, the more it will draw us into the machine's power." The princess's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying? We can't just walk away. We need to destroy it." "I know," the hero said, stepping forward. "But it's not that simple. The Guardian is the key to the weapon's power. If we destroy it, the weapon itself might be activated." The princess's mind raced. She had come here to end the Empire's reign, but now they faced a dilemma far more complex than she had ever anticipated. The very guardian they had hoped to defeat might hold the balance of power in its hands. "Then what do we do?" she demanded, her eyes searching the hero's face for answers. The hero's lips tightened in thought, then he spoke, his voice heavy with resolve. "We need to separate the Guardian from the weapon. We can't just destroy it. We need to disable it, disconnect it from the machine's core. Only then can we destroy the weapon without triggering a catastrophic chain reaction." The princess took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. This was a plan born of desperation, but it was the only one they had. "Then let's move quickly. We don't have time to waste." The team moved into action, but the Guardian wasn't going to let them reach the ruins without a fight. As they advanced, it raised its massive arms, the stone armor on its body shimmering with dark energy. With a single motion, it released a burst of force that sent shockwaves through the ground, knocking several soldiers off their feet. The princess grabbed her blade, rallying the remaining soldiers. "Push forward. We can't let it slow us down." The hero stood by her side, his eyes burning with purpose. "We fight, but we need to get to the core. That's where we'll find the power to sever the connection." With a single, unified charge, they moved toward the heart of the ruins, dodging blasts of energy from the Guardian as it tried to keep them at bay. The air crackled with tension, the ground shaking beneath their feet. The deeper they ventured into the ancient structure, the more the weight of the unknown pressed in on them. They were getting closer. The heart of the weapon, the source of the Empire's power, was within their reach. But so was the Guardian, and it was determined to stop them. The battle had only just begun. The heart of the machine. The deeper they ventured into the temple, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls of the ancient ruins seemed to pulse with energy, their surfaces etched with strange, glowing symbols. The air was thick, as if the very breath of the planet itself had been trapped within these walls for centuries. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of something vast and unfathomable powering up. The Guardian's voice echoed in the princess's mind, reminding her of the immense power that lay ahead. "You cannot defeat what is older than your world. You cannot break the bond between the Guardian and the weapon. This is your final warning." But the princess, undeterred, kept moving forward. She refused to let fear rule her. The stakes had never been higher. She could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing on her shoulders. Her people were counting on her. The future of the entire universe rested in her hands. "We're close," the hero muttered as they moved through the narrow corridors of the temple. His expression was grim, his eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement in the dark. "I can feel it. The core is just ahead." The princess glanced at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "How do you know?" "I've been here before," the hero replied, his voice distant, as though lost in memories he'd rather not revisit. "I studied the ruins. I found a way to shut down the weapon, but only temporarily. The problem is the Guardian is connected to the machine's core. If we don't sever that connection the moment we try to destroy the weapon, it'll trigger a chain reaction. We'll all be wiped out before we can even leave." The princess's grip tightened on her blade. "Then we need to disconnect the Guardian from the core, as you said. If that's the key, we don't have time to waste." As they rounded the corner, they finally saw it. The heart of the temple, a vast chamber illuminated by a strange, otherworldly glow. In the center stood a colossal structure, like a gigantic crystalline sphere encased in intricate metalwork. The machine pulsed with energy, sending ripples through the air as though it were alive. It was the weapon, the power that had allowed the Empire to dominate countless worlds, bending entire populations to its will. And standing at its base, in front of the glowing core, was the Guardian. It wasn't just standing guard anymore. The creature had become one with the machine, its massive arms reaching out to touch the crystal, feeding it energy. The Guardian's glowing eyes turned toward them as they entered the chamber. It had been expecting them, sensing their presence long before they had arrived. "You cannot sever what is eternal," the Guardian boomed, its voice like thunder. "This bond will never break. You will die here trying to undo the balance of the universe." The princess clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the Guardian's words, but she didn't let it stop her. They couldn't back down now. "Stay focused," the hero shouted to the team. "We need to get to the control interface. The core is what controls the Guardian. If we can overload it, we can disrupt the connection long enough to sever the bond." The princess nodded, her heart racing as she moved toward the base of the crystal. But the Guardian wasn't about to let them take another step. With a roar, it raised its massive arms, slamming them into the ground with a force that sent shockwaves rippling through the chamber. The floor cracked beneath them, and debris rained down from the ceiling. "Move," the hero yelled, drawing his weapon. "We need to keep it distracted." The team sprang into action, taking cover behind large stone pillars as they returned fire. The Guardian was relentless, each movement a tremor that rattled the walls and threatened to collapse the entire temple. Its massive form was a blur of motion as it swung its fists, trying to crush anyone who dared get too close. The princess, however, didn't hesitate. She could see the path to the core. It was clear in her mind now this was their only chance. She had to reach it no matter the cost. She dashed forward, her blade slicing through the air as she narrowly dodged the Guardian's strikes. Her soldiers provided cover, distracting the Guardian long enough for her to make it to the control panel near the base of the crystal. The machine's energy pulsed, and the air around her crackled with electricity. "Princess," the hero shouted from across the chamber, "be careful, the core will try to reject you." The princess didn't flinch. She had come this far. There was no turning back. Reaching the control panel, she immediately began to work, her fingers flying over the ancient controls. The panel hummed to life as she activated a sequence of commands, trying to override the system. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before. Its interface was ancient, a combination of alien technology and something far older, something almost mystical in its complexity. A cold, metallic voice boomed in the chamber. "Access denied. Identity mismatch. Intrusion detected." The princess's heart skipped a beat. She had to act fast. "Override, override," she muttered under her breath, trying to force her way into the system. She could feel the Guardian's presence looming behind her, its eyes burning with rage as it tried to stop her. "Do you think you can just erase us from existence?" the Guardian roared, its voice vibrating the very walls of the temple. "You cannot destroy what is eternal. We are one." The princess felt the machine's energy rise around her, the air growing colder, heavier. She could sense the core's defenses coming online, trying to stop her from completing the sequence. The weight of the galaxy seemed to rest on her shoulders. The hero was right. If they didn't disconnect the Guardian from the machine, it would destroy everything they had worked for. Her fingers flew across the control panel, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought against the clock. The screen flashed, displaying lines of complex data. She could feel the pulse of the machine in her veins, as if it were trying to sync with her to control her. And then, just as the Guardian lunged forward, she hit the final key. For a moment, there was nothing. Silence. Then the entire temple shook violently as the machine's core flared with brilliant light, its energy rippling outward in a wave of raw power. The Guardian screamed, its form writhing in pain as the bond between it and the core began to fracture. The princess staggered back, shielding her eyes from the blinding light. "Now!" she shouted to the hero. With a final, desperate effort, the hero charged forward, his weapon raised high. In a single, powerful strike, he pierced the core, the blade crackling with energy as it cut through the glowing crystal. The chamber erupted in a blinding explosion, the shockwave throwing them to the ground. The princess's vision blurred, the world spinning as the force of the blast knocked her unconscious. But somewhere in the midst of the chaos, she knew that the future of the galaxy had just changed forever. The shattered dawn. The darkness enveloped her. The explosion had sent her crashing into the cold, jagged stone of the temple floor. Pain shot through her body, and the ringing in her ears drowned out all other sounds. She could barely open her eyes, the world around her a blur of smoke and scattered debris. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her breath came in ragged gasps. The princess struggled to rise, her limbs trembling, the weight of the battle still pressing down on her. But something was wrong. She couldn't remember if she had won. With a deep breath, she forced her eyes open again, blinking through the haze. She saw shadows moving around her, familiar figures. The hero, kneeling beside her, his face etched with concern. "Princess," he said, his voice soft but urgent, "are you all right?" The princess nodded slowly, trying to push herself up, only to find her body betraying her. Her head spun, and her vision blurred once again. She could taste blood in her mouth, a sharp reminder of the explosion's aftermath. But despite the pain, she felt a flicker of hope. They had done it, hadn't they? The core. It had to be destroyed. "Is it over?" she whispered. The hero's gaze softened as he helped her to her feet. His hand was warm, steady. "Not yet," he said, his voice grim. "The core was damaged, but not completely destroyed. The Guardian, it's still alive." The princess's heart sank. The Guardian had been more than just a protector. It had been a catalyst, feeding the power of the weapon. She had hoped that when the core was damaged, the machine would fall silent. But it seemed the force they had unleashed had only temporarily disrupted the balance. Something had shifted, but not enough to undo everything. She steadied herself, pushing past the dizziness. "Then we finish it. We finish this now." The hero didn't argue. He stood tall, looking toward the center of the chamber. The once glowing core was now dark and cracked, but it still hummed with residual energy, a quiet reminder of the power it contained. The Guardian, too, was stirring. Its massive form was no longer standing as tall as before, its movements sluggish and uncoordinated. The bond between it and the machine had been weakened, but the Guardian was not yet defeated. Slowly, the Guardian's towering form turned toward them, its glowing eyes dim but still burning with fury. "You think you can destroy what has existed for eons?" The Guardian rumbled, its voice rasping as if the very power of the machine was seeping from it. "You think you can erase the legacy of the Empire?" The princess didn't flinch. The Empire's grip on the galaxy had stretched too far, and now they were the ones who held the power. She stepped forward, her sword in hand, a determined gleam in her eyes. "We aren't erasing anything," she said, her voice steady. "We're ending the cycle. You were never meant to control this galaxy. You were never meant to be the rulers." The Guardian's head tilted, as if considering her words, but it didn't stop. With a growl, it raised its arm, its massive hand crackling with dark energy. The princess could feel the energy gathering, the ground beneath her shaking with every heartbeat. She turned to the hero, her eyes locking with his. "This is it," she said softly, "together." Without another word, they lunged toward the Guardian, moving in perfect synchrony, their every action sharpened by the countless battles they had fought side by side. The hero's weapon gleamed with an energy of its own, a weapon forged for this moment. The princess gripped her blade tight, knowing that this was the final act. The guardian swung its massive arm down toward them, its fist descending like a thunderstorm. But the hero was faster. He dodged to the side, slashing his blade through the guardian's stone-like armor. Sparks flew, but the creature barely flinched. The princess, with no hesitation, followed him. She dashed toward the guardian's exposed flank, her sword slicing through the dark energy that shielded it. She could feel the power of the machine crackle beneath her touch, but the sword cut deep, digging into the very core of the guardian's being. It roared, the sound shaking the temple as it stumbled back, its eyes wild with rage. The princess didn't let up. Her blade danced with the light of the shattered core, striking at the cracks in the guardian's armor, forcing it back step by step. The hero joined her, his weapon flashing as he struck again and again, finding weak spots in the guardian's hide, making every strike count. But the guardian wasn't going down easily. With a sudden, desperate motion, it swung its arm in a wide arc, knocking both of them off their feet. The princess crashed into the ground, gasping for air as the pain radiated through her body. The hero rolled to his feet, but the guardian wasn't finished yet. It raised its fist, ready to crush them both. "Move," the hero shouted. The princess, her mind already working faster than her body could react, saw it, the glowing control panel at the base of the ruined core. They had one last shot to disable the guardian, to sever its connection to the machine once and for all. But it was too far away. The guardian was blocking their path, and the odds seemed insurmountable. Then something shifted inside her, something deep, something primal. She leapt to her feet, her sword gleaming with the last reserves of her strength. She ran toward the guardian, feeling the weight of every step, every breath, as if she were tapping into something older than herself, something that had always been there but had never fully awakened. With one final, powerful cry, she launched herself at the guardian's exposed chest. The sword plunged deep, and this time it wasn't just the blade. It was her will, her defiance, her strength. The energy from the broken core surged through her, and the guardian screamed in agony, its massive body writhing as if torn apart by an unseen force. The princess held on, pushing all her energy into the strike. The guardian faltered, its form flickering, its strength weakening. The connection to the machine was breaking. With a final, deafening roar, the guardian crumbled, its immense form falling to the ground, lifeless and still. The temple fell silent. The princess stood amidst the ruins, her body aching, her breath shallow but victorious. The guardian was gone. The weapon was broken. The power that had once threatened the galaxy had been shattered. She turned to the hero, their eyes meeting once more. The tension between them had faded, replaced by something else, something deeper, something that could only be understood by those who had fought together through impossible odds. "It's over," she whispered, her voice hoarse but triumphant. The hero nodded, his expression one of quiet relief. "For now it is, but the galaxy will remember this. They will remember that we stood against the darkness, and we won." Together they looked out across the temple, the echoes of the battle fading into the distance. A new dawn had broken, and with it, a chance for a future unshackled by the chains of the past. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, the princess could see the path ahead clearly. And she was ready to walk it.